Welcome everyone to the Lake Lewis Jr. Show. Appreciate you joining. As always, we're going to break down the Washington Commanders, and it was a tough one on Sunday. However, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on today's show as more of a season recap and talking about, what they did well this year. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time dogging the team or ripping them to shreds because they didn't play well Sunday. I was at the Link in Philadelphia, and the atmosphere was absolutely electric, folks. You got to give credit where credit is due sometimes. And the Philadelphia Eagles were the better football team. That's why they're going to the Super Bowl. And for my money, they probably were the best team in the NFC all year long. After that Cleveland game, Philadelphia turned it on, and they hit a different gear. And they're winning games with great defense and great running. They're not even throwing the football like they used to. Well, Sunday, they did do that. So we're going to break all that down today. Before we get into that, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me at Lake Lewis Jr. on all social media. And then, of course, if you want to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so via audio at Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. And then you can subscribe to it and watch it via YouTube. And the channel on YouTube is The Lake Lewis Jr. And then, of course, the show on all platforms to subscribe to, audio or video. It's The Lake Lewis Jr. Show. It was tough. It really was tough Sunday being part of that and seeing it, and just, seeing the Eagles fans going crazy. But again, the atmosphere was just, it was literally electric. I had never seen a professional venue like that ever. I've been in some playoff situations before and stadiums were loud. I remember, Washington against Seattle playoff game. That was a loud, FedEx Field. The divisional pretty much championship game against the Cowboys that same year, the final game of the season to win it, to win the division was epically loud, if you can say the word epically. But what I saw Sunday was different. It was just, I'm losing my train of thought here, thinking about how loud it was. It was something I've never experienced in the pro venue. And say what you want about the crowd and say what you want about the atmosphere. The one guy that wasn't fazed by it was Jayden Daniels, number 5. Jayden Daniels, to me, solidified himself in a loss, believe it or not. Solidified himself as one of the elites of the game, one of the elite quarterbacks. There's the top 4. We already know who they are. If you don't know, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, they just played in the NFC Championship game, ironically. Lamar Jackson just played, in the divisional playoff game. And then Joe Burrow didn't make the playoffs. Had he made the playoffs, they could have been a dangerous out in Cincinnati. So those are your 4 top guys. Jayden Daniels right now to me is number 5. And I'm not blowing smoke here. I'm not saying it because I cover the team, not knowing it because I know Jayden. I'm saying this because he's played the way those other 4 guys have played. And for someone that says, no, he hasn't gotten him to the Super Bowl. Josh Allen's never been in the Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson's never been in the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow has. Patrick Mahomes is going back again for the 5th time. I'm going to say this, though. I don't know if they've done it with what Jayden Daniels had to do this with this year. Outside of Terry McLaurin, and you can make an argument for Zach Ertz, Washington has nothing on offense as far as weapons. And I'm just being honest about this. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. I'm being a journalist who covers the team, who sees it. They've got some complementary pieces in certain areas, but unfortunately at the skill set positions where you need game changers, where you need people who can make plays consistently, not every now and then. I know people are going to throw at me De'Ami Brown. Nice kid, decent football player, but he's not a game changer. And he's not a guy that you're game planning for. He had an opportunity to possibly play himself into a position like that and did not have a strong game Sunday, put the ball on the ground on a fumble that was costly at a critical time in the game. Some people may throw Austin Eckler at you. I like Austin Eckler. I think he's done some really good things this year, and I think he'll do well next year when he comes back. But Austin Eckler's not a featured back, not at this point in his career. So he put the ball on the ground. Jeremy McNichols, the 3rd string running back, was returning kicks. That's not what he normally was doing. and he fumbled. So what you saw Sunday for Washington it was a microcosm of the season. It was guys that bought into a culture, and that culture elevated their play. That culture elevated them as a cohesive group, a unit. And they played well for each other and together. But when you break it down and you're playing a team like the Eagles where you need game changers and game wreckers on defense and playmakers, speed, you saw how limited Washington was. You saw how limited outside of Terry McLaurin, they really don't have a game changer on offense. It's Jayden, your quarterback, and it's Terry, your receiver, your number one receiver. And then you have Zach Ertz, the veteran presence. But they don't have anything else. And I think that that's something that's going to have to be addressed this offseason. They're going to have to go out and get a home run threat running back or someone that can move the sticks. They're going to have to be able to go out and get one or two receivers. Maybe a guy like Garrett Wilson could be available. I know he wants out of New York. There's other guys out there. People talk about T. Higgins. Well, if you're T. Higgins and you know you're going to go to another place and be a number 2 or a 1A, you might as well just stay in Cincinnati and do that. That's the bottom line. I'm saying that Washington, if they can go out and assure some things, if they can go out and maybe get, via free agency, some offensive linemen, because remember, Sam Cosmi's out. With Sam Cosmi being out, he's probably going to be on the PUP list to start the season. This isn't a recovery of an ACL from a skill set guy. This is an offensive lineman, a big one at that. So it's probably going to take him a little bit longer to get going. And remember, the injury happened so late this year, it clearly will affect him going into next year. So that might be a position that you have to look at. I'm saying maybe Trenton Scott's the guy that you put in there right now, because I thought Trent played really well over the last 2 games since having to come in for Sam Cosmi. Okay. You could put Cornelius Lucas, re-sign him. He's a free agent. You could re-sign him. Put him at right tackle. Start him over Andrew Wiley at right tackle. Trenton Scott, right guard. Tyler Biadasz at center. He played well this year. Probably one of the big bright spots on the offensive line. So you put him back where he belongs at center. Start him there. And then the catch is maybe you move Coleman. Okay? Coleman's played well at times at left tackle, but you can see with speed rushers and guys with flexibility who can bend, they give him problems. So maybe you move him into guard. At left guard, Nick Allegretti could be a guy that gives you depth along the line, not as a starter. And then what you do for your free agency, or maybe the draft, if there was someone there that you really like, you get yourself another left tackle. That way your line can be a little assured. And then remember, Cosmi, if he can come back, not expecting a whole lot right off the bat for him, because ACLs take some time to get your feet under you and get back, and he's an offensive lineman. So, that could hold the fort there. Get yourself one or two other receivers. Maybe you entertain the thought of another tight end to pair up with Zach Ertz, who wants to come back, Ben Sennett, who I'm expecting a lot more from next year, and then another tight end. I don't know if John Bates is that guy for them as the third tight end. That's just me. Okay. Then, of course, the running back room. I'd like to see Chris Rodriguez in the mix next year. Not as a starter, but just as a reserve back. I think Austin Eckler comes back because he has a 2-year deal, so he should be back, But you have to get another home run threat at running back. And if you can do that, it makes things interesting for the Washington Commanders offense, because as long as number 5 and number 17 are out there doing their thing, they're going to be okay. They're going to be in football games. But if you get those two guys more talent around them, they're going to win more games. So next year, this is a team that I do expect to challenge to be in another NFC Championship game. Maybe they can close the gap a little bit with the Philadelphia Eagles, because we saw on Sunday there is a gap there. There is a talent gap. There's a playmaker gap. There's a dog gap. It's on both sides of the ball. And the Eagles have built their thing steadily with homegrown talent. Yeah, they went out and got a trade for A.J. Brown a couple years ago. But for the most part, these are all homegrown draft picks. That's the way you want to do it. And I'm pretty sure Adam Peters likes that philosophy. This year, had to go out and get a lot of free agents to gut a roster that was terrible. But now I think you're going to start seeing his guys being developed and being in there. You'll see the guys like Hampton, who didn't play much this year, the Jordan McGee's. They're going to be guys that will probably be more mainstay players going forward. And that's what you want. On the defensive side of the ball, remember, folks, I told you, we're not going to spend a lot of time going about what happened on Sunday and coulda, woulda, shouldas, because they had 55 points hung on them. They weren't winning that football game with the amount of turnovers that they had. You gave up 7 rushing touchdowns. You're not going to win that football game on the road in that environment against a team that talented. That's just the way it is. So they still have to catch up to Philadelphia. What we're doing now is we're talking about what needs to be done to close that gap. I think on the defensive side of the ball, they have some questions that they're going to have to figure out. What are you going to do with your 2 tackles? John Allen and Daron Payne. Do you keep one? Do you keep both? Do you let both of them go? Do you try to trade them? Personally, I think what I saw with my own eyes up close is it seemed like Johnny Newton, who they took this year, in the second round from Illinois, defensive Big Ten Player of the Year from last year. I think he had a really good rookie year. Obviously, he needs to get a little stronger, have a full off season because of conditioning and weight training. He played this year coming off 2 surgeries on both his feet. I'm trying to say that word twice, not feet, on his feet. So I thought he played very well. But the question now is, if you keep one of those tackles, who's the best pair up with him? I thought John Allen paired up with him really well on Sunday. I know, the results weren't there as far as overall for the team, but I thought it seemed like they worked better off of each other than Johnny Newton and Daron Payne. That's just me, okay? So now you have opportunities to do some things here. On the back end, do you re-sign Jeremy Chin? Do you bring him back? I think you do. Quan Martin obviously is there. And I think Marshawn Lattimore will be better next year. He struggled in his time this year, but he showed you glimpses of who he is and what he can be. For everyone saying, oh, he got cooked on Sunday, yeah, it was a tough matchup against A.J. Brown. But Marshawn Lattimore, was brought in here at the halfway mark with a bad hamstring. And I'm not making excuses for him. I'm just telling you facts. He was put up against the 8 ball right off the top. And to be their number 1 corner to cover some of the best receivers in the league, you need to know your scheme in and out. You need to know your personnel around you. You need to know your teammates' names, let alone the personnel. I think he'll be better off having a full off season, a full mini camp, full training camp, full preseason, and hit the ground running for their first game next year. Mikey Sainristil had a really good rookie campaign. For my money, he was their best secondary player this year. He's a converted wide receiver from Michigan. That Michigan converted him. Jim Harbaugh moved him to corner, and the guy will come up and hit you. He's got great eye-hand coordination. Naturally, he was a former receiver, so he can catch a football. But the question is he really tailor-made to be on the outside in the NFL? I know in college he did it, and he did it at a high All-American rate, but is he equipped to do that in the NFL for 17-game schedule? I think Mikey Sainristil would be better in the slot, and I think that's originally where he was drafted to be. It's just that the cornerback play was so shoddy. So he proved that he can play it. So he is interchangeable. But I think if Washington were to go out and get another corner, starting outside corner, physical corner, to pair up on the other side of Marshawn Lattimore, you can move Mikey Sainristil in the slot, and I think you would get equally, if not more, production from him. And like I said, in nickel coverages, different packages, you can move him on the outside. You can make him interchangeable. So they're going to have to address that. The linebacker room, I just mentioned McGee and Hampton. I think they'll be in play to be a 3rd and 4th linebacker next year with Bobby Wagner, of course, and Frankie Louvu, who I thought played the best defensive game on Sunday against the Eagles. Some of the other things you have to really take a look at is you have to get more edge rushers. You have to get edge rushers that are disruptive and violent all the time. Dante Fowler Jr. had a really good year, and he should be re-signed. I would bring him back. Dorrance Armstrong had a strong season as well, but I think you can see the limitations with those guys at times. So they're going to need a game wrecker. They're going to need a guy like a Jared Verse, who's with the Rams now, was a rookie. You could just see he's a game wrecker. I like Kyle Kennard. He's my good friend Bobby McCray's talent. From McCray Sports. That would be a nice fit for Washington. I don't think he'll be there at 29, but you can wish and you can hope. But they're going to have to get a couple game wreckers on defense, that are just disruptive, that are guys that play with that tenacity and speed is another key factor that they're going to have to upgrade on defense. So it's not dire straits by any means, folks. This team was in the NFC Championship Game. So kudos to them. Kudos to Josh Harris, new ownership group that is letting the right people run the organization. Kudos to Adam Peters for pushing all the right buttons as far as the draft, as far as the free agent talent that he brought in. They got him to the NFC Championship Game. Kudos to Dan Quinn, who for me is the coach of the year in the NFL. I think to do what he did with a rookie quarterback in a first year with this organization, trying to change the culture to get to the NFC Championship Game, to win 12 games, something they hadn't done in over 30 years. It's just remarkable. If that's not what coaching is, if that's not the coach of the year, I don't know what the award should be given out for. He had a roster that probably has a talent grade somewhere around 70%, competing against a talent-based group in Philadelphia that has a talent grade of probably 95. He had them playing them in the NFC Championship. That's coaching, and he has to be commended for that. So kudos to Dan Quinn. So, folks, I wanted to come on here. I really didn't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about Sunday as far as the game. We know what happened. You give up 55 points, you're not going to win the football game. When you turn the ball over 4 times, you're not going to win a football game. When you give up 100-yard rushers, you're not going to win the football game. Okay? That's just the way it is. I do want to say I had a great time in Philadelphia. Ironically, the people up there treated me like gold, and had a chance to catch up with some friends up there. Had a chance to catch up with Deshaun Jackson, my guy. Had a chance to catch up with Bobby McCray, my dude. Joe Marone, appreciate, the love. I went up there with him a better half, and we had a good time. We really did, under the circumstances. So it was work and pleasure at the same time. But still, this season was magical. If you're a Commanders fan, congratulations. Now you know what it's like for us old heads who remember the glory days. You don't have to hear us talking about it anymore. I know you get sick of it and you're sick of seeing the NFL films, the same stuff. But now you're going to be able to create new film for this franchise. You're going to see Jayden. You're going to see Terry. You're going to see, a younger fan base now coming to the games, being excited about the future of this franchise. And the future is bright. They legitimately have a chance to get back to where they were this year. They may not win as many games next year. They may win 10 games, 11 games, but they're a playoff football team and a playoff team that will make a run in the playoffs. And I expect them to be just as good, if not better, as far as the product on the field. But remember, they're going to have a much tougher schedule. They're not going to sneak up on anyone or surprise people. Everyone knows about Jayden. So it might be tough to win 12 games or surpass that for next year. But I think that they're going to have that in their mind, that that's the goal. And the goal for them next year is going to be Super Bowl or bust. That's what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about winning games, winning in the playoffs, shooting for it all, shooting for the stars. And that's what they're going to be doing next year. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see the maturation of the organization and where it is in year 2, having had a full year to see what they need to do to get better. I'm excited to see where they're going to go. So, my friends, this has been a great, great run this year with you guys. And it's not over. This show continues. This podcast continues weekly. You also see myself on Rio Robinson's podcast on Tuesdays. There's one dropping the day we did earlier. But you're going to see me with him on Tuesdays. We're going to be doing it for 2 hours on Tuesdays, all throughout the off season. So yeah, we're going to continue all these things. So remember, easy. Hit that subscribe button, that red button you see right there. Hit that button, subscribe. You'll get these updates, when the show drops. And we're going to have a lot of fun in the off season. I always say you make your name in the off season because this is where your contacts come in. So you don't be surprised if you see players on here talking about, things they're doing in the off season and vice versa. But as always, I appreciate you guys greatly. I wouldn't be where I am in my career without you, my supporters. So I love the banner. I love when we go at it. I really do. I respect everybody's opinion. Hopefully you respect mine. So we'll continue this thing throughout the off season, and it's going to be a lot of fun. The draft is coming up. I'll be there, this year. I was there last year in Detroit. One of the first people to talk to Jayden coming off the podium. It was exciting to see that. So it's going to be interesting to see who they draft this year. I'll be in Indianapolis in a couple of weeks for the combines, seeing who they're looking at and, getting in these press conferences with the coaches and players. So lots of stuff for this off season. Nothing changes. And then, of course, we'll have rookie mini camp. We'll have mini camp, veteran mini camp, mandatory mini camp, training camp, preseason, and then we'll be heading into the 2025 season. Before you look up, it'll be here, and it couldn't come soon enough to get that taste out of everyone's mouth after Sunday's loss. So again, my friends, I appreciate you as always. We'll keep this thing going. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. Hit that button right there, or you can go to Lake Lewis Jr. on social media and see some updates there, or you can subscribe to the podcast at Lake Lewis Jr. Show, and that's via all audio carriers and here on YouTube. So appreciate you guys. Have a good one.